Apologies I can't be there, everyone. I'm going to cover what I've been working on as far as service measurement frameworks. So you might remember we agreed that we would attempt to measure two services. And so I've got here the request a limb service and apply for a resource consent service using two frameworks. So the Good Services Framework and the UK's GDS Digital Service Performance Framework. So that would lead to four um, applied frameworks um, to look at. I haven't managed to go through to do both frameworks on both services, so I've only done both frameworks on one service. Just a reminder of the two frameworks. So one framework is based on the Good Services book by Lou. I can't remember Lou's last name, Lou, and it's 15 principles. Be easy to find, clearly explain its purpose, etc., 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 down to number 15. And she provides tools, and you can see here a spreadsheet where you would go through each principle and score it between 0 to 4. The UK's um, the UK's GDS team's performance framework is based on four elements: cost per transaction, user satisfaction, completion rate, and digital take-up. And you can see an example here where they've done it for vehicle tax renewals, and you can see the total transactions per year, the total cost per year, and the consequent cost per transaction. So immediately, as I started doing it, it became clear that the good services framework is very much from the customer's perspective. So you can, which means that you can conduct the analysis by not even being inside the organization, really. An external person could use this framework and look at how easy or difficult limbs are to get, though it is more useful to be inside the organization because you can ask clever people questions about what if this happens, then what happens, etc. Whereas if you look at these elements from the UK's thing, they all require access to data that is only going to be available inside the organization. So the cost per person inside the team that's doing the work, the number of transactions, etc. And an external user cannot naturally see those things. So I managed to do it for limbs, not completely, but a kind of brief once over, and I'll just give the skim through the actual request a limb service. So imagine I searched Google for Wellington limb, which might be I'm buying a house or I'm selling a house, and someone tells me you're going to need a limb, and I don't even know what a limb is, but so I go to Google and I type Wellington limb. The top result is the Wellington City Council website, so that's good. I click through, and then I see this page about limbs, and it explains what limbs are and why I might need them and what they do, how much they cost, and then there's a big orange button to click through, and I click through and it gives me terms and conditions, and then I click through again and I get to the online request form to get a limb. So I went through that process and I applied these principles, be easy to find. So, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but I've given that a 3, and it scores well because, as you can see here, that it does pop up clearly on when you Google, and you don't need to know what you're looking for. And it's I feel that this is all intuitive and clear, and it flows. And the only point against it, which is a really tough one, is that LIM's an acronym. So I mean, I've on more than one occasion I've heard people say, "What does LIM stand for? What is a LIM?" And then that's kind of counterbalanced that with the fact that LIM is universally used across all local governments in New Zealand. So there is some kind of consistency, but at the end of the day, it is jargon. It's not jargon that Wellington City Council can uniquely fix, but yeah, I will dismiss that. What's super hard about these 15 points scoring 0 to 4 is how do you visually, so I haven't completed it. There's a few questions I'm still kind of not sure I want to commit to a number for, but you get down to the bottom, you get a total score like 0 to 4 times 15. And actually, it's doing pretty well. It's at 40, but it can actually pick up a bunch more points because there's a few more questions we couldn't ask. So how do you visualize the response? I think not very well. This is probably the best way you can do it, but you could have a radar chart. So you've got your 15 elements and then the scores 0 to 4. I actually think radar charts are a terrible choice because they look cool, but they actually obscure a lot of data. You could have a bar chart of how many principles did it score 4 out of 4 for. So you can see it got 4 out of 4s. Very confusing thing to say. Got 8 3 out of 4s, and then it didn't get any of the other ones. That total number doesn't add up to 15. Or you could just look at all of the principles and just visualize which ones scored high and low, and you can see that here are my empty ones over here. So that's the first framework. And then the other framework applied to limbs is very much from internal inside the organization. So I was helped with by Shane and Nicole from resource consents. I haven't got to the resource consents, but this is actually close to this transactions per year for limbs is actually close. I only got data for 6 months because I was trying not to be annoying. This is approximately the number of transactions for a calendar year. This up and down stuff here is actually fictional. And I've got this blue note up here. Some of this data is dummy data. Total cost, this is actually close to the cost of the salaries for the people doing it. So you can say that that's actually pretty close to the cost per limb for the organization. And you can compare that to what we charge for limbs. And we charge both above and below that depending on the category of limb. You can see transactions per month. So this is simply the data that Shane gave me, but you could imagine providing this performance dashboard for every single service we provide across the council. If we go back here, you can see that's actually what they do at gov.uk. You can browse through all the different services and see the different, you can see this pattern I've stolen here. And then we go down, so transactions per month, you can see those over time. You can see that the lion's share is residential versus non-residential. Percentage of digital transaction, so LIMS Online, this thing here, there are non-digital ways of requesting a LIM, but you can see here that the majority of LIMS are done via digital channels. And user satisfaction is not, it may be collected, but I didn't run into the data for when a LIM is produced, whether we ask someone how satisfied they were with, and you could imagine satisfaction can be done. Is this limb satisfactory? Was the process that you had to go through to get a limb satisfactory, or was the online application form satisfactory? So you could measure a bunch of different things. And you can also measure, can I pull it up? Is it going to let you do it? Let me just, you could also, if we go back to the framework says also completion rate. So we would do that by going to Google Analytics, and you can see here the number of people who click through to the first page of the LIMS online request, and you can see, and then who eventually get through to the pay online thing is 33 or 34% is the completion rate. So that is the service performance frameworks, and I've probably spoken for more than 5 minutes. I'll see you next time.